Hello everybody. What I've got here is a large piece of spalted maple. It measures 20 inches, or almost 20 inches on one side, and 19 inches across the other. It's a little bit uneven. It kind of rocks on a high point. It's anywhere from 3.5 to 4 inches tall. Right here, I'm trying to find a good center, and I did an outline for a 16-inch circle using my new bandsaw to cut that out. And you can kind of see how the piece isn't flat at all, so it kind of rocks up and down. Made it a little bit more difficult to cut. I think one of my next shop projects is actually going to be a jig to make cutting pieces like that a little bit easier. I didn't do too bad of a job, but I had to go back a couple times. There were some high points. Kind of funny. I couldn't use my drill press because the piece was too large, so I had to use my handheld drill to drill a hole for the worm screw. I like using the worm screw. It's pretty simple and fast, and it does a good job of holding it. Those CBN wheels do an excellent job. So what I'm doing here, I'm first going to level out the bottom, and then make sure it's round. Since it's uneven and the circle cut isn't all that great, it's pretty off balance. Initially I was able to get up to about 650 RPMs, but I had to reduce that after starting. So I'm using my Carter & Sons bowl gouge with a standard grind. Maple is a really nice wood to turn. It cuts pretty easy. I usually get a little bit of tear out, but it's just real fun to turn. Now that's mostly flat, I'm going to work on making it round. You can see right there the lathe walked a little bit. It's amazing how many shavings get thrown onto the floor when doing a larger project like this. So what I'm doing here, I decided to try and make an ogee. So I found the approximate center and then the center of the either two halves. So kind of the rule of threes. I'm shaping the lower part of the ogee now. Now start working on the center part, and then bringing in the top part. And you'll be able to see more of a profile when I'm done. I think it will turn out pretty nice with the OG type form. Right now I'm using a negative rate scraper. It's just used to be a Sorby skew, and I just reground it to turn it into a negative rake scraper. It works pretty good. Still get a little bit of tear out with it, but that's kind of to be expected, especially with maple. Now that the bottom is nice and flat, measure for a mortise. I like using a mortise as opposed to a tendon. It's more of a personal preference. They both have their applications, but more times than not I'll use a mortise. Using a parting tool just to define the outer edge of the mortise. After using the bolt gouge, I'll use a skew, and the angle of the skew will actually cut into the side of the mortise and create that beveled edge, so the Nova jaws will hold on better. For the first part of this video, I lost most of the audio, having some problems with my camera, but it should pick up here in just a couple seconds. That's such a large piece. It seemed like it took forever to get the sanding down. Started with 80 grit and ending with 400. Here I'm heating up my brand. I like using a branding iron. I think it's kind of rustic, and it just looks nice. It's permanent as well. I left it on a little bit too long, so it kind of distorted it a little bit, but it's pretty easy to clean that up with some light sanding. Once that was done, now I'm using some myelin sanding sealer to seal the grain. Overnight, I ended up getting a couple cracks. I think the wood was still a little bit wet, so I wanted to go ahead and seal it. I didn't get through all the grits, and later on I'll fix those cracks with some CA glue. Just denibbing it now with a Scotch-Brite pad. Came out pretty nice. Now it's time to flip it around and hollow out the front. Still using the Carter's & Sons. It's a 5/8 inch bowl gouge with a standard grind. The shavings just curling off of that blank. It made it so much more fun to turn. If you're enjoying the video, I'd sure appreciate it if you subscribed. My channel is pretty new. Still working out a few bugs, but I plan on having at least weekly content. After getting it hollowed out, I went back and used the negative rake scraper just to clean it up a little bit. And of course, Titus had to make the seam. Now I'm sanding, same sanding routine. Here's where I fixed the two cracks. I used some Star Bond medium black CA glue. With the spalting already in the wood, I thought it matched it pretty well. And once again, using some sanding sealer on the front. Now I decided to use some of my handmade or homemade sanding abrasive paste. I actually got the recipe from a turner by the name of Kim Tippin, and I'll try and remember to add a card with a link to her video. She explains it pretty well. It's pretty basic to make, and it seems to work really well. I decided to use a new kind of finish, or at least new to me. I hadn't tried before. General Finish's wood bowl finish. I had already put a coat on the bottom, and per the instructions, before you put on a second coat, use 220 sandpaper to level it out or smooth it out before you put on a second finish. It recommends 2 to 3 finishes. I put the second finish on video, so you'll be able to see that here in just a couple seconds. Now that 2 coats of the finish is on, I use the sanding paste to level it out and to polish it a little bit. The instructions actually called for wet sanding, but I thought this would work just as good and a little less messy. If you like what you saw, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button. I'd be interested to hear your comments below. Here's the finished product. I think it turned out great. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Until next time.